Welcome back to Hardball. Since her nomination for Vice President, Sarah Palin of Alaska has done only a few select news interviews, and she's been the target of TV comedy skits, of course, and late-night monologues. But this Thursday, it's for real. In St. Louis, voters will get a chance to see her up close and personal debating Democratic candidate Joe Biden. So how are the both candidates preparing for that big night? Let's turn to our strategists. This is for real, guys. I got two cornermen here. They know their business. Todd Harris on the Republican side. I want to see a bucket in your hand, a towel over your shoulder. Steve McMahon, you're going in there. You got Sarah Palin. All right?
I'm sorry, Todd.
No. It's good to have the bar low.
Yeah, if you lower expectations anymore, right?
She's
exactly.
New. She's the new kid on the block, the new person on national stage. No Washington experience. Okay. She's up against Gwen Ifill as well, the moderator, who's going to ask some serious questions. How does she prepare?
I would say she needs to do two things. Number one, don't pretend to be something you're not. This whole idea that she's an expert on all things foreign policy because of where Alaska is geographically, it doesn't hold a lot of water with average people. But what does is for her to go in and say, you know what, I'm the mother of 5 kids. My oldest son going off to war. I have a child with special needs. I have a daughter who's going to be a young mother. I understand the challenges, the needs of working people in this country better than my opponent does. And the second thing she needs to do is literally reach through the TV and grab those working Americans. Forget about Joe Biden sitting there. Forget about Gwen Ifill and the lights and the cameras, and make that personal connection with the voters. Pretend she's sitting in the living room, and she can do that.
While I'm on that question, suppose Gwen Ifill is as tough as Jim Lehrer, and she will be, and says, answer my question. I'm not asking you how many kids you have. I'm asking, what are we going to do about the dollar and its shrinkage? How do you stop the dollar from shrinking? A particular question, which I don't know the answer to, what does she do when she's confounded, when she's hit with a real hard question like that?
Well, she's going to have to be able to
say, I don't know?
No, she's going to have to be able to answer.
Maybe who does know?
Well, I mean, that's the good thing about that question is that the answer is so subjective, but she's going to have a good answer.
No, it's a tough question, but presidents are confronted with that all the time.
Right.
Let me go this. Let me just try you in reaction to that. Suppose you're Joe Biden, and you've got all your homework done, and he will, and he confronts, and this woman comes on, and he knows politics, and she's winning the audience. She's just seduced the audience. They love her. She's a mother of 5. She's taking a lot of heat from the big shots in town, in Washington, New York. They like her. What's Joe Biden do confronted with that strategy?
Oh, well, I think the first thing he has to do is basically take the fight to John McCain, because at the end of the day,
ignore her nice story about her life.
Ignore her nice story. If I were Joe Biden, I would do a number of things. Number one, I would not be mean to her, and I would not be condescending.
But
and
go
I would
after
not try
McCain.
to be a smarty pants. Number two, I would go after McCain at every single opportunity and make this race, frame this race the way it needs to be framed for the public. And number three, to the degree possible, I'd keep my answers short, and I'd let Sarah Palin talk for as long as possible, because the one thing that she seems not to like is silence, and she fills the silence sometimes with words, and she gets nervous. And I kind of feel bad for her in one sense, because she gets nervous and she keeps talking, as she did in that clip.
I want to try to be fair here, because that's an old interrogator's trick.
It is an old. Katie
time.
Couric, when she did that interview, I don't know if you noticed, but she sat there and she waited and she waited and she waited, and she didn't break Sarah Palin up. She didn't give her an opportunity to rescue herself.
I know what was happening. Rick Kaplan was in her ear saying, savor it, pull back, pull back. Because he's done that with me. He's done that with me. Wait it, give her time, give her strength.
It's important, when you grade these things, though, these debates don't happen in a vacuum. There's not one person who's judged up against themselves. And so Steve is absolutely right, because I think that she will be judged based on what she does. Biden will be judged the complete opposite. He will win or lose, not based on what he says, but what he doesn't say.
Okay, let me try this back over you again, so everybody gets this again. Let's do a little remedial here. You say don't try to keep up with Gwen, who knows enormous amounts of material. Don't keep up with Joe Biden. They're the Washington experts. So yield that field to them. And I go back to you again with the same question. If they try to yield that, if she clearly pulls the number you're suggesting she pull, what will you do? Will you jump in there as Joe Biden and say, well, I got an answer to that last question, and let me tell you what we did in 1983 or does that make you the old guy? Or is that, in other words, does showing your expertise make you look arrogant and condescending?
I think an interesting tactic for Senator Biden might be to answer questions like that and then say, I'd be interested to know what Governor Palin thinks, and just stop.
Oh.
Because then Governor Palin is going to have to answer or not answer based on what she thinks, and she might not be prepared.
What would she do then? What would you recommend she do if he confronts her with, tell me how you'd reduce the size or and strengthen the dollar? Something serious.
Well, she ignores his question and talks directly to the voters, which is, that would be my final piece of cornerman advice to her. Whatever they throw out. Remember, this is not Gwen Ifill and Joe Biden is not your audience. Your audience.
Okay, let's talk about that. Back to you. Who's the audience for this? Is it the Conoscenti? Is it Dan Balz of the Washington Post? Is it somebody from the Elizabeth Buehmiller of the Times? Is it somebody who's going to write that big story the next day? Is it the audience watching at that time who either falls in love with one of these two people or doesn't? Or who is it?
It's the audience at home.
The live audience.
You could see that in the debate on Friday night because a lot of people think that the McCain campaign did a pretty good job with the spin. If you read the transcript of the debate, it looks like John McCain had a much better performance than he did. But you remember we talked last week about turning down the sound and watching how somebody looks in a debate? Barack Obama looked really good. He looked presidential. He looked confident. Yeah. John McCain looked angry and mean and grouchy.
Okay, you take a turn at this. How did they do on Friday night?
I think it was basically a wash. I don't think that in 10, 20 years, anyone's going to be talking about what happened on Friday night. I think McCain gets points for being more on the offense. I think Obama gets some points for holding his own.
I agree. He was on offense, and I thought he dominated the first 45 minutes with all this about earmarks. Was he too angry? Too troll-like?
No, I don't.
He doesn't like that word, but troll comes to mind. He never looked at his opponent the whole night.
That was odd.
Yeah, I don't know why he didn't look at him, but I thought.
I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you, Steve. You guys are the best. Thank you, Steve McMahon. I was very honest and very useful.